Today, I wanted to talk about one of the biggest game announcements from this summer E3, not E3 time period where we've had some showcases here and there with Capcom and Square Enix, which I think Square had a pretty good showcase overall, and it did have my favorite announcement so far. If you've been following this channel for long enough, you know there's a game that I've been calling on Square to do something with, a remaster, a port, anything, and that's Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. It's been stuck on the PSP since 2007, and it's a story that people, especially who are looking at something like Final Fantasy VII Remake, should be aware of, now more than ever. So I was absolutely thrilled when I saw that, yeah, Square is bringing back Crisis Core. In fact, they're going a step further and doing one of the best remasters I've seen so far in screenshots and video. And I'm going to talk to you a bit here about the game and why you should play it. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you're subscribed down below. Also, I did look back at this video and realized I talked quite a bit about Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core's ending, specifically how it pertains to Zack, and obviously how we then moved into Final Fantasy VII and then Final Fantasy VII Remake. So while this game came out a long time ago, I wanted to at least bring that up, that there is some spoiler territory here, even though we know what happens with Zack, at least as it stands currently. It's still something you may want to experience on your own. I didn't go over any of the events leading up to the end of Crisis Core, which I think is the more important part with some of the characters that are involved in it, but still, just wanted to make you aware before we start this video. So, first of all, Square did describe some of the changes and upgrades they're going to be making here with Final Fantasy VII Reunion. They say it is a true remaster that follows the original's narrative, Zack Fair's mission to find the missing soldier Genesis. It features multiple improvements from the original game. For example, the graphics have been converted to HD with all the 3D models, from the characters to everything else being fully refreshed. What's more, the dialogue is now fully voice acted, and there's new arrangement for the soundtrack. It's coming out this winter. I'd like to think that means this year, but winter can stretch into the following year, so it's like midway through December until like March. So this could be an early 2023 game. Keep that one in mind. But I'm hoping that Square has a full physical copy of it, all of these things. It's coming to all platforms though, so Xbox, Switch, PlayStation, and on PC. The idea here is this is basically the events leading up to Final Fantasy VII, but it came out after Final Fantasy VII was already out there. Obviously, this was in 2007, so well after Final Fantasy VII had already broken onto the scene and exploded online and just in stores and everywhere, right? And that's one of the reasons, obviously, that Square made this game, is because of how well Final Fantasy VII did. They continue to expand on the lore with games like this and Dirge of Cerberus and so on there. But this followed Zack's entire story. And I say entire story because it was a tragic one since it ended a bit early, which is one of the reasons I think Zack Fair has become such a popular character in the Final Fantasy lore and fandom, is because he is a sympathetic character. He's a character who we played out their story in Crisis Core, knowing the whole time that, yes, he was eventually going to die at the end, passing on the Buster Sword to Cloud along with all of his memories, and at that point, kind of being erased. I mean, Cloud essentially took his identity, or at least believed he was Zack. Aerith, however, knew Zack, so she remembered him and even would talk to Cloud about Zack as like her first boyfriend in certain scenes in Final Fantasy VII. So with a lot of alluding to Zack in Final Fantasy VII, when Crisis Core was released, it was really exciting to go back through the story, and there's a lot of story there to go through. The only thing here, and one of the reasons I don't mind necessarily talking about some of the spoilers for Crisis Core, I think it's being changed, mostly because it has to be changed based on the direction they're going with Final Fantasy VII Remake, because Zack is still alive in some capacity. We're still trying to figure this out at the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake, now going into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We see it at the end where he survives the massive onslaught of Shinra soldiers, and he's able to, pick up Cloud and just continue trudging along towards Midgar. Which means while the ending is different, the journey there isn't. So Crisis Core Reunion, when it does release, is one you're going to want to check out. if nothing else, for the story and the characters that are involved with it that you really haven't seen much since then, like Angeal and Genesis. Sephiroth obviously has found his way into Final Fantasy VII and different bits of media since. But looking at this with Zack's journey, it was pretty interesting to follow through because it shows Cloud in a completely different light than we had gotten to know him with Final Fantasy VII, showing that Zack is like the true quote-unquote hero. In fact, most of the way through, Zack's goal appears to be he wants to be a hero. Like, just that's it, the typical hero who is able to save people and hold up justice and all of this. And in fact, in that trailer that they showed for Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion, they made sure they had a line in there about wanting to become a hero because, in fact, the final thing that Zack says to you, the player, as you're going through, again, this little PSP game, we're playing on this little handheld, after they have you work out some of the battle that you're inevitably going to lose, Zack passes on the Buster Sword to Cloud, says, "You're my living legacy," dies, is being pulled up into the sky by Angeal. The last thing he asks is, "Hey, do you think I became a hero?" And then it cuts the credits. One of my favorite endings in a video game ever. I have seen a lot of people ask about the gameplay in Crisis Core, and it's very different from basically anything else. I mean, I guess you could, because this would have been at 2007, you could kind of compare it to Kingdom Hearts a little bit. Like, it is action oriented, so you'll run around and all this. You technically press a button to pick attack or your items or spells. It's sort of Kingdom Hearts-esque, you could say. So it does at least have that action flow to it while also maintaining a menu system. But the roulette wheel at the top, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was called. I just called it the roulette wheel when I was playing it. Does shift things a bit as it will match up numbers as well as characters throughout the series, and you'll get different effects as you're playing. It's just something to kind of keep an eye on as you are going through these battles. So it will make things completely different from battle to battle. You still have an entire materia system. You can level your character up to the moon. You can do all kinds of cool stuff in there when it comes to doing large amounts of damage if you're willing to spend time to get there. So with an interesting battle system, a good storyline for Zack, the visuals being beefed up here, they look way better than what they did on the I mean, it's PSP. They can only do so much there, right? So to see that, and then one of my most frustrating moments in this game on the PSP was the camera. But you have to remember, we only had one analog stick on the PSP, so them changing up the controls so that we can take advantage of dual analog sticks and I would say just overall quality of life improvements. I mean, this is certainly going to be the best experience, bar none, we've seen when it comes to Zack and his story playing out. And I had mentioned earlier that the ending is going to change. Like, we already saw it change. That's how we know it. So I figure they're going to work this remaster, quote unquote, out to where we do have some out of left field change that ends up just linking us right into Final Fantasy VII Remake. So while they're calling it a remaster, I think it's still going to border on the line of remake when we have that little extra bit at the end that makes it so Zack will be part of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And that might be kind of controversial because one of the reasons, like I said, that Zack was so popular is because he was that more sympathetic character who, would walk out in the middle of hundreds of other soldiers on the other side just to defend, as he said, freedom. The price of freedom is steep. He's defending like Cloud over who's just basically left for dead at that point, being completely poisoned by Mako, and Zack feels the need, hey, you know what, I'm a hero, I'm gonna go defend him. So when he survives, he'll have still completed the heroic act of defending Cloud, but it'll still be that sense of he lost a little bit of something because, he wasn't a tragic figure who had to die for Cloud to become Cloud. But to be honest, I don't really care because we've already seen Zack's storyline play out in one timeline, so I'm curious to see what would happen in the alternate history that he survives. And I don't think that really changes his character too much for me. I'm just interested to see where they go with things in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But I will tell you, I think it's worth picking up Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion. I know it's not out yet or anything, but based on the source material, the changes that they're making, I think it's certainly one at least to keep an eye on, see how reviews turn out. and then jump in at that point if it is a good remaster. It looks like they spent a bit more time on this one than they did on something like Chrono Cross. But let me know what you guys think about Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion. I am very excited about this one. Square, we need that physical copy. No, we need a collector's edition. Actually, one better than that, we need a hero edition, all right? Come on, Square. Don't let me down. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.